So let's do a little bit of recap for everybody, and then we're going to try to jump into a couple of things. What I want to do is take a step back this week and also talk about the business side of vibe coding, because so far we've been kind of deep in the code, and I had a couple calls this week also. Thank you guys for booking. If you haven't booked a call with me, book a call so we could go through your project and what is it that you're working on. Therefore, I could get a little bit more understanding of who you guys are, what you're doing, and then we could figure out how to put you on track. But one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit before we jump into the code, right? Because half of these conversations are about code and the other half is about business. And I want to make sure that we don't lose that. Why? Because it's important. Most of you have experience on the coding side, but not necessarily on the business side. And it's important because why are we here? So one of the things that I want to make sure that we start doing if you're going to vibe code an application is how do you get an MVP launch as soon as possible? And I mean as soon as possible. I'm scared that people will call me a fraud soon as possible. Okay, like that soon. And the reason for this is you can easily spend an enormous amount of time combing through all of the technical challenges, going deeper. I need to solve this database problem and I need to fix things. Thank you for confirming that. I appreciate that. And you could really just spend just an enormous amount of time over analyzing the details of the product. I want to stress this. If you're in for the very first time, you've never built a project before, and you've never had to support customers on a SaaS application, you will learn so much by just launching. And when I say launching, even if you don't have the project, launch. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm going to go through some diagrams to show you what I mean. I want to talk about this because this is important. For my salespeople in the room, you guys know this. I might skip this part, but for my technical people that has never really done sales or business side of things, this is important. And if we're going to vibe code to profit, which is the whole purpose of this entire group and community, we have to talk about this side as well. Good. All right. So let me give you a real world scenario because I was talking to one guy specifically, not going to call any names today, that is 90% there with his app vibe coded. Then we had a conversation this week and he mentioned he was ready, just had a few more things to get done. But when we started talking about the business side of things, there was just a lot of holes in his knowledge in terms of what we need to do to get a successful app. This is really important for you guys to get right. I've struggled through. I have failed multiple times launching multiple apps, and I've learned a ton of things on what not to do. I want to make sure that if we're vibe coding, that we're going to not do those same mistakes. Mistake number one, let's just talk about that. Mistake number one is to launch too soon. So I'm going to say launch late. Let's just do it like that. Okay. Launching late. That's mistake number one. And when I say launching too late, what do I mean? I mean, thinking that you know the problem, trying to solve all of the problems, not talking to customers, and spending more time iterating because you think that you don't have enough features to launch. And I know most of you kind of fall into this camp. This is a really big problem. And I actually find that it's a real problem more with technical people. Let me explain what I mean by that. There's kind of two different people that would be vibe coding, right? Let's call it the technical group, right? You have some experience, and then you have the non-technical group. If you're non-technical and you had some experience with sales, I find that these guys try to get their stuff out as fast as possible. Generally speaking, if you're non-technical, you tend to push your app out pretty fast because you're going to do all of the sales things, right? You're going to start from the sales page. You're going to start pushing the copy, the marketing type stuff, right? That's basically what you're going to be doing. But if you're technical, you tend to focus on the code aspect of it, right? You tend to focus on the database. You tend to focus on the features, right? So what ends up happening is you end up in a trap where you start with code, do some database stuff, add some features, and next thing you know, you're back to the database, you do some more coding, and you're just in this sort of endless cycle. Whereas this tech person here don't have half the experience that you do, don't even know how to write the code properly, and they go out and they actually launch and they start talking to actual customers. And they're starting to get some sort of response from the customers. And they might not necessarily have the product, but they get the feedback. And it turns out that the feedback is extremely valuable for you to launch an actual project and for you to be able to launch something properly. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more. So that's mistake number 1, launching too late. And we're going to talk about how to address this problem altogether. Come on. There we go. There we go. Mistake number 2. Get my pen. Number 2. This one, I'm definitely guilty of overcomplication or overcomplicating things. What do I mean by that? First things first. What are you doing wrong? You are not only adding too many features, you think that if you don't have these 10 features, nobody will buy the product. This is a fallacy because you add more features, you get more complication. If you're technical, it adds more complexity to the code. It adds a lot more overhead in terms of being able to debug problems. Adding more complications creates a problem that falls back to the feature problem, right? You just kind of spiral in feature. But the reason why I'm bringing this up specifically is because when you have an overly complicated application, you muddy the waters in terms of who you're selling it to, right? What ends up happening is you overcomplicate the application. You're not certain who your target market is because you might have 2 or 3 or 4 different people that you're selling to. As a result, you do none of those features well. You end up trying to compete with the big boys, right? Let's say you're building a CRM system and competing with HubSpot and Salesforce. You try to build a whole bunch of features because you feel like if you don't have these features, then you can't sell it and launch. So you keep adding more complexity because the user needs to be able to do 10 things. And what happens is your product is too primitive for somebody using Salesforce or HubSpot, and it's too complex for somebody that's never done this stuff before. You get into this weird situation where you're kind of selling to experts, but you really and truly you're talking to entry-level people and you don't have a clear ICP. Obviously, the opposite of this is to not complicate things, right? These are the things that I see over and over again that just prevents people from launching their app, and you just end up sort of spending way too much time doing things. This last one here is, how would I describe it? You overcomplicate, you launch late, and then you get into a price war. What do I mean by that? You get into a price war. And by price war, I mean an artificial price war. How do you address first impression makes or breaks it? Okay, yeah, when you launch so quickly and your product fails at the first stage of authentication, does that make it harder to get clients' trust? Yes, we're going to talk about exactly that because that's a real thing. I'll tell you exactly how to deal with it. Very good question. Extremely good question, actually. So, price war. Let's finish up the third one and then we're gonna circle back. I'm gonna address every single one of them. All right. So price war. Here's what typically you will do. I want to be clear with this. I have done. I'm not telling you something that I've never done before. I've literally done every single one of these and figured out that it's just not the right way to run a business. So you see a competitor that you want to disrupt. We're trying to build something that's going to disrupt a market, that's going to solve a specific problem because we see some other alternative solution out there, but it's not servicing this very specific niche market that we're trying to solve for. So what do? Our natural instinct is if the competitor, let's just say COMPETITIOR. So let's say the competitor is priced at $100 per month. Okay, competitors start for $100 per month. You decide that you're going to sell your product and you're going to say, you know what, we're going to sell it for $29 per month. And you're like, we're going to win the market because we're going to be cheaper and most people are going to come to us because our product is going to be better and it's going to be cheaper. And therefore, why would you want to pay $100 per month when you could pay $29 per month? And this is absolutely the wrong way to think about things. I can't stress this enough. This is the worst thing that you could do. If there's any single thing that you could take away from this call is do not price cheaper than your competitors. I would argue price higher than your competitors. We're going to talk about why in a second. I know it sounds a little bit weird that I'm telling you to do the opposite, but you got to trust me on this because you end up in a situation where you're just racing to the bottom. There is a reason why your competitor is charging the price that they're charging. There's a reason. Now, in some cases, some of these prices are overinflated because we do live in a capitalist society. One of the things that come out of it is you got VCs or private equity firms that would buy up these smaller companies and then they just start raising the price up because they want to just make money. That's a different conversation, but it's a real thing, right? For example, I got a real example of that right now. I normally use a tool called Loom. Love Loom, fantastic product. Today I tried to log into my account, paid account. I clicked on it. I was like, okay, log in with Google. I click on that. I try to sign in. And what happens is it just fails. it says, oh no, error happened. I can't get into my account. I literally cannot get into my account right now. I have no idea why. I got tons of videos inside there. So VCs buying up companies is a real thing, or it's not VCs, but private equity firms buying up companies is a real thing. In this particular case, the competitor buying up the product is a real thing. That's a nice thing for us. Just to be clear, if we're a vibe coder, that would be really nice for us to be bought by a big company. One of the things that really drives me nuts is every single time I get a really good workflow, some company buys up the tool I was using and they just destroy it. It drives me nuts. It's the reason why I've come to the conclusion I just build my stuff myself, because I've used so many tools over the years. I've gotten comfortable with them. A company buys them up and they just turn it to garbage. And I just don't know why. The price war is a real thing. It's actually a price trap, because that's what it is. Do not do this. Why? Because you will run yourself into the ground because you're pricing improper, and that pricing incorrect strategy forces you into a position where you can't make money. It's actually very hard for you to raise your price, but it's easy for you to give a discount. Okay, so if any single thing, start high and then give people discount, add more value to the product and give discounts. That's the recommendation. So let's go back to the top because I want to answer this question. Your question is very valuable, Simon. So let's jump to the top here and we'll talk about it. Mirror. V is for this guy here. Okay, so I got to do V first and then thing. All right, launching late. Let's address the opposite of launching late. Obviously, the opposite of launching late is launching early. But to this point and this question here, what happens if you launch early and your product fails for the first time? Your authentication, your trust, every single thing just goes out the door. Here's the procedure, specifically answering your question, Simon. When you launch, you're never going to truly launch publicly. In other words, you're not going to say, hey, website's launch, go sign up and buy my product, because the truth is your product is not ready. In fact, I'm talking about before your product is ready. I moved recently, so I got a bunch of books in my garage. It's called Lean Startup. Very good book, by the way. This book covers that issue in detail, way more than I would do on this, but I'll give you the gist of it. The gist is very simple. You launch with a waiting list. That's the first thing. We're going to go into more details on this, but I want to just give you sort of like this book sort of methodology. So launch with a waiting list. ING, waiting list. Okay. So you're not actually giving out the product. Author Eric Ries, I think it is. ERICREICE, I think it is. Lean Startup, Eric Ries or Ries. I don't know if it's Rice or Ries. I'm from the Caribbean, so everything I see, I see. All I see is Rice. Yes, really good book. Fantastic overview about this concept about launching lean, like very, very lean. And it's what got me onto this principle after tons of failures, just to be clear. So what do? You launch with a waiting list landing page. So you start very, very small. The reason for doing this is twofold. I'll explain every single thing, but I want to make sure that we kind of get the basics. You launch with a landing page. So you obviously know with a waiting list, nobody is seeing the actual product. And if you think about it, I'm sure you've seen this tons and tons of time in the past where you see people, they launch and they're like, you click on it and it's like, oh, waiting list. For example, good example, OpenAI launched Sora, right? Okay. You might think that the Sora app, right? And they launched a Sora app and it was like, let me see. Is it going to allow? No. Okay. Stay on old Sora and get invite code. Here you go, right? Get invite code. Here. So you might think that this get invite code is, just like it, but I'm telling you what they're doing here. Basically, what they're doing is two very specific things. Number one is they're throttling their application deliberately. They built the product. Okay. Obviously, OpenAI got a significant amount of money, so you can't compete with this, but the principle is still the same. They launch a product that looks really good and seems very polished. But everybody knows that every product has bugs inside of it. So what they do is they start sending out invite codes. The invitation codes is a different form of the waiting list. It's the same thing. They launch it. It's going to be friends of friends, other popular figures, maybe people in the media, etc. People, they could somewhat control the narrative. It's not truly controlled, but it's somewhat controlled. They got a scale-up problem on their hand on the back end. They have infrastructure that they need to scale up with. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is if they release it to everybody all at once, people are going to use it and then they're going to find the bugs and they'll be like, oh yeah, this doesn't work the way that I think it should work. And then they're just going to leave it like it is. So you create an artificial barrier, an invitation code system. The invitation code system throttles the amount of people coming in, but more importantly, allows them to kind of fix the bugs as it kind of comes in a reasonable fashion because there's a limited amount of people. On the opposite side of it, it's creating demand because, hey, I'm like, well, how can I get a Sora invitation code? I'm sure if you go on eBay or something like that, you might see somebody selling invitation code to Sora, right? That's how you sort of create this artificial demand. Now, let's just bring it back to us, small vibe coders here. The reason why you want to do the waiting list is because you want to quickly gauge if there's interest for your product or not. Because your idea, while it might be valid, doesn't mean that it has an audience for it. Chances are, if you do your marketing right, you'll get an audience. But the point is, you don't know if there's an audience for it. So you have to test the market before you commit all these tokens, building out an AI product that you can't necessarily pay for, right? So what do? You create a landing page. Number one, you create a waiting list. You get a bunch of people that's going to sit in your database. Those people that are sitting in database, you're going to manually reach out to every one of them or a few of them by email, by message, whatever it is. And you're going to try to see if you could get a meeting with them. This is my Zoom meeting. You're going to try to get a Zoom meeting with them. And then you're going to take down what their problems are. What are the challenges? What are the things that you need from me? Preaching this, I'm teaching this, and I'm also doing this at the exact same time. I'm going to give you a more realistic example because I'm literally doing this right now. So I started a school community, as many of you guys know. All right. I want to be clear. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've never started a school community before. I don't even know if people are interested in a school community for vibe coding. I know that there's some interest in CloudFlare. I just personally like CloudFlare and I started talking about CloudFlare. But I recognize that there's a lot of people interested in this topic. So I said, we're going to create a community. And in this case, it's a free community. But what did I do? I reached out to each one of you individually, right? I hopped on a call with you and you're telling me some of the problems and challenges you're experiencing. What am I doing with that information? I'm writing it down. I'm basically putting together structured content based off of the same information that you're telling me. So in the exact same way is how you're dealing with this waiting list. Your waiting list promotes all of the features that you're thinking about building and you want to do and all of the magic stuff that you think is going to work in the market, but you don't know that yet until you get those people into some sort of bucket and start reaching out to them one by one. You do one-on-one calls with them. From those one-on-one calls, you get a bunch of feature lists of items. And then you say, if you had to choose, what is the one thing that you would want this app to do? The one thing, or the top three, if you want to just kind of get some rankings, right? Ideally, you talk to about 20 people. But if you talk to 5 to 10 people and you keep hearing the same top three things over and over, then you know what features you need to be focused on, what you should be building. And what you're basically doing is asking them, if I build these features, would you be willing to pay for it? And if so, what do you think is worth to you? Gauge your interest. People are going to have all kinds of random set of numbers. It doesn't really matter. It matters that they're suggesting that, yeah, if you had this feature, it'd be worth my time to pay for it. Or they'd be like, no, I would want it for free. The point is you're gathering information, right? You're gathering information. Thanks, Simon. All right, make perfect sense now. Your examples are very convincing. Yes, this is a real tactics and it's super important. That's why the goal of this school is vibe code to profit. Like I said, coding is half the battle here. The other half is learning how to sell. If you don't know how to sell, you end up in a situation where you got this amazing product and it's like, well, why is nobody using my product? Or how do I get customers? And you kind of start working backwards, trying to backtrack, trying to figure things out. It's a nightmare. Talking from experience here. Once you talk to these people and you truly understand what is important to them, what are the things that make sense to them, then you go off and you start building. This will shift your focus and shift your sort of priority list. And then you narrow down the feature to the top one or the top two, maybe top three if you have to, okay? But from those 20 people or the 10 people that you talk to, you will have enough information to understand truly what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And only then will you be able to go off and actually try to work the product out. The next step of that product, we're still in number one, we're still in the launch phase, right? We're going to show you how to not overcomplicate the product itself, right? Because now you know your ICP. For those who don't know, ICP stands for Ideal Customer Profile. An ideal customer profile just basically means somebody that's going to buy your product. Let's use real world examples. Let's say you're selling Lamborghinis. Who wants to buy a Lamborghini? Well, certainly not me, because I don't have the money for a Lamborghini, right? I might want to drive one, but I don't have the money for it. So who's buying Lamborghinis? Probably a business person in his 40s, maybe 50s, successful in business, and wants to show that he's earned his way up the ladder, right? Or maybe he's going through a midlife crisis. Who knows, right? And he just decides, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go buy a Lamborghini. Maybe he just came out of a divorce. I don't know. The point is, you need to figure out what that ICP is. Once you figure out who that person is, you sell only to that one person. Maybe I'll give you a different example. Let's say that you are building, well, actually, I use my software. We're selling to contractors, SnapSuite, you're selling to contractors, right? Who are contractors? There's so many different types of contractors out there. HVAC contractor, electrical, there's garage door, there's like general contractors. There's so many different markets. So what we did is basically said, we're selling to people that do HVAC and electrical. If you do plumbing, you could use our software, but these are the only two people that we're talking to. So when I have a conversation or I do marketing, I'm literally only talking to HVAC or electrical people. That's it. Because I know that the business owner that runs an HVAC or electrical company that's doing manual work would use our software. In fact, it's more like a business owner that does HVAC or electrical work that has between 5 to 20 employees that is using QuickBooks and don't have a process in place, doing every single thing by paper, is who our target is. Very, very specific. You might be saying to yourself, oh, well, if I get too specific, then does that mean that I can't sell to all these people? No, in fact, the more specific you get, the more targeted your messaging becomes, and the better you're able to target your customers. This is the most important thing, and this is the thing that you need to really, really be thinking about, right? So your ICP. Super important. So with that, because you know the one, let's call it 1 to 3 features, that's what you're going to be basically launching with, right? In management, we call it strategy focus management niche. Focus on marketing niche. Yes, your market niche. Super, super important, your ICP. So with that, this is how you simplify the complexity of your application. More importantly, you only launch with 1 or 2 features, maybe 3 at most. Why? Because you've talked to 10 to 20 people that might potentially buy your software. Obviously, they're not all going to buy, but you're hoping for about a 20% conversion rate, maybe 20 or 30%. What you do with these people is you give them early access and say, hey, I'm going to give you early access to a beta software, and in return, you're going to give me feedback. So to go back to your specific question, Mr. Simon, this is how you address that problem, because you're dealing with a control set of users that understand this is a very early product that you're giving them beta access to in response for feedback. That feedback you will use to improve the product. And then whenever the product is improved, what you're going to do is, now you're getting that feedback, but you also want to make sure that they're going to pay at some point too, because else you might end up having a bunch of free users on your hands, right? So what you're going to do is give them early access for a set amount of time. Let's call it 3 months. Free. And all they have to do is jump on a call once a week or once every other week to give feedback to understand what the problem is with the product. After that 3 months, you're going to give them a 60% discount. And when you can get them there, between that time, you're going to try to get some sort of that testimonials where you're going to use to put on your landing page, right? Your MVP page, to say, hey, we got real users using this product and this is what they said, right? Now you might want to help craft the message for them. But the point is, this is how you go from I have absolutely nothing to I've given early access to a select set of people, I've gotten their feedback, to but between now and that time, I need your feedback to make this product better. So that when you do your second launch, you're launching with significantly more knowledge about the market, and you could talk directly to the actual person that has the pain that you're solving the problem for. Hopefully that makes sense, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't launch early, you can't find this information out. You don't get the information. And when you do that, you get into a situation where you're just sort of guessing. Maybe you had some industry knowledge, which is relevant. Industry knowledge does help a specific market, but that inability to properly articulate the problem from real customers puts you at a disadvantage when you're trying to scale up your marketing. Hopefully that makes sense. Right. Price war. Okay. So here's the thing. I want to be clear. Certain products in certain markets, you just can't charge a high price. But what you're trying to do is carve out a niche of a market where you can solve a very, very specific problem that somebody will willing to pay more money for it. So what you're going to do is, on the pricing, going back to the example, your competitor is charging $100. I want to make sure that you guys get some core concepts. Your competitor is charging $100. And let's say the product had 10 features. They're charging $100 per month for those 10 features. Okay. You might actually come into the market, have one feature, charge $80. I'm trying to give you an idea of why this does not matter, the pricing. The problem with this is that you end up with a race to the bottom. You start at a comparable price for the 1 or 2 or 3 features that you've added to the products that you know absolutely is needed. What you're really trying to do is not price against your competitor, is you're trying to price the worth of that specific product. And most technical people, they get this wrong, because what ends up happening is they think that they need to price based on the feature. It's actually not the feature. It's based on the perceived value and the amount of time saved by that user. If you build that one feature, just to give a real world example, let's say you built one feature that does not exist in your competitor's application, and that one feature is saving a business owner, let's say 3 hours a week of work that they would have otherwise had to manually do. The question is, what is that 3 hours a week worth to that business owner? That's the question that you need to be asking yourself. Not, oh, if I charge $80 a month and my competitor has 10 features and I only have, right? You need to be thinking about, how much time am I saving my target? What is the value? What's the outcome that you're going to get from this feature? And then what is that worth to them? If a business owner got 3 hours back in terms of their time per week, they're probably going on the golf course. I don't know. But whatever that is, it's worth their sanity. So you're giving them back their time, but you're giving them back their mental sanity, right? Their ability to focus on something else. And that has a lot of value. If a business owner that you're targeting, most business owners that are, sort of have a little bit of cash flow or whatever the case is, the thing that they value the most is their time. So they're willing to pay more to get back their time. Super important. So do not ever value your product based on your competitor's price. You need to be thinking about what time is being given back target ICP. That's just an example of how to think about pricing, and we could go into a whole conversation about it, but that's how I want to start this conversation, because I want to make sure that everybody that's in the vibe coding community, by the way, if you're on TikTok or on YouTube and you haven't join the community, because I'm going to be doing more videos specifically on this. Like one of the course that I'm going to be doing is on this. Right now we're at CloudFlare and the technology side of things, but we're going to jump over to the business side of it as well too, because I want to make sure that people have execution step-by-step plan. No worries, man. Appreciate you jumping in. Thanks for joining. I appreciate your time covering business and tech. Very insightful session and your efforts. Thank you. You have a wonderful day. Now that we got some idea about the business side of it, we're going to jump into the technical side, because the only reason I can have this conversation with some level of confidence is because of my failures. Okay. Failed so many times. At some point, you just have to learn this thing. I want to make sure that you guys don't fail in the same way. I want to make sure that everybody that is in my community can progress significantly faster without having to go through the same set of failures. That's why we're called Vibe Code to Profit. If you haven't joined the group already, join Vibe Code to Profit. Learn to build, launch, and scale your first SaaS application. Let's move on to another part of the process, which is talking about code. Hopefully you guys got some value from this. I see 3 people watching. We got a small group today, but that's okay. These calls are recorded. People will watch in their own time. I get comments after the fact. Sometimes everybody can't watch at the same time, which is totally cool. Let's talk about some coding. Where did we leave off last week? We were talking about integration with email and our app. AI Summarizer. That's what we were building last week. So what is it that we wanted to do with our application? Our goal was to do a couple of things. With the AI Summarizer, we're building an app that will essentially have a timer system. What that timer is going to do is hit Gmail every minute or every 5 minutes or whatever, and then it's going to pull the information into our application. It's going to store it in a database, and then it's going to use the RISE database, CloudFlare. So if you don't know what a vector database is, we should at least address that. A vector database is a way that AI can understand text better. So we kind of talked about this last week, but I'm going to do a quick recap for everybody else to join in. The hardest thing about doing this live stream is figuring out what to do with my mouse. Let's say that you have a piece of text. The fox ran over the hill. Okay, make it bigger. When you're working with AI and you type in the fox ran over the hill, I don't even know if this is proper English. Just work with me here. AI doesn't actually understand text, even though it sends you back text. What it actually does under the hood is when you give a text, it has a translation layer, okay? And that translation layer turns in that text to a bunch of numbers. One, let's say it will be like 1003, comma, right? For every word, more or less, I'm trying to keep concepts simple for non-technical people. So for every word, roughly, more or less, or a group of words, or whatever, it turns it into numbers. And that process of translation is what we call vectorization or embedding. That vectorization is important because that's what the AI understands. And more importantly, the reason why the AI understands this is because when you type in, let's say, for example, you type in a question, where did the fox run to, right? As an example. I don't know if this is proper English, okay? Nobody, please don't harbor my English. I have dyslexia, and so every single thing is a little bit jumbled in my brain sometimes. So if it doesn't make any sense, it's the principle that matters here. When you type in the question, where did the fox run to? Same thing is going to happen. The AI will basically turn that into a number. You get the idea, a bunch of numbers. And what it's basically going to do is some sort of pattern matching. Beyond this level, just know that it's going to do some level of pattern matching and say, oh, this is related to this question. Therefore, these numbers are connected. And it's going to pass through its neural network transmitter and it's going to return text. It's going to figure out the number sequence and then it's going to turn that back into text. It's going to return OV. This concept is important to understand because when dealing with summarization or data, you want the AI to understand that's personal information. You have to always do this step, which is to vectorize, aka translate, create embedding to steer that data in order to ask questions against your own data. In our specific case, we're trying to do AI against our email. We're trying to read our email inbox one by one. Whenever we read an email, we're going to take that email, extract it, put it into a database. Then we need to extract it and put it into a vector DB. Once we put it in a vector database, we can ask questions against the vector and store those answers back in our database so that a human being could read it in the app. So as an example, we read the entire email and then we translate it to vectors. Then we ask the AI to summarize the database, take our instructions to summarize, turn that into vector, compare them, and then basically spit out actual text, give us back text, and that will be a summary of our email that we can then store in our database and push out back to the user. So that's what happens under the hood. The tools that we use to do that, so CloudFlare, Vector, Introduction to Vectorization, and Workers AI. Vectorization now generally available. The overview documentation is so weak. I mean, it's all there. It's just no diagrams, no nothing. So here, Workers Embedders, Workers creates. Vector embeddings using Workers AI, okay? So I want to make sure everybody's up to speed. This process that I've put in this information is called RAG, Retrieval Augment Generation. You retrieve some data from Gmail. You augment it by saying, hey, I want to summarize the information, etc., right? You then get your answer, you generate an answer, RAG, right? That's what RAG is. Actually, I just want to say it because what's missing here is the LLM part, so LLM. Because when you do the embeddings, you still have to take both the embeddings and your data to send to the LLM to basically get the generation. That's the generation part of the RAG. So with CloudFlare, it's the vector database that stores those vectors for you. And see here, vector embeddings using Worker AI. So now you should have an understanding of what this is, right? If you come into the docs, you should be able to at least understand. You have to create a vector DB by just running this command. The vector DB is what stores the vectors, the embedding. And then from there, the vector embeddings using Worker AI is their sort of CloudFlare worker that basically does you can create the index. So here, right, you got the vectorized index. And once you got your embeddings, you can set up your worker. Your worker is like an orchestrator, basically doing all of this stuff. So here we have real application, in a real world application that could read content from R2 SQL database. So they're just doing this basic text here, and they're basically creating embedding from it, vectorizing it. So convert vector embeddings into format vectorize accept, dropping it into the vectorized database, right? And then after that, they're running a query against it, which is Orange Cloud, right? So hopefully that makes sense. So let's go. So with that, we're going to try to see if we could actually get our application going. By the way, if you haven't joined the school community, link is in the description or above at the top. It's a place where you can learn how to vibe code. We got a community of people. We're up to 24 members now, so we're growing slowly. And it's free community that you can join. We got a couple courses inside. Well, a couple courses. I got one course in there right now. There's more coming. I got a few more courses coming, but we got our foundations for the web, which is a very, very entry level course. I deliberately wanted to start with this because I had a way to level set people's knowledge, because it's very easy to get deep into the weeds with the complexity of CloudFlare. I needed to make sure that if somebody doesn't understand the concept, I could just point them to very, very entry level knowledge. So at least you have some foundation. It's not a technical course by any means. It's just so that you can, if you're interested in that. All right, let's move forward here. There's one other thing I got to talk about. We got to talk about authentication, which we sort of did last week. We didn't really get it working properly, but we need to go into the details of it a little bit here. What I think I'm going to do is a little bit of business at the start, because it's code to profit, and then do technical. Some of you might be here for the technical. Some of you might be here for the business. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be thinking about both sides of the coin. It's very easy to get sucked into the technical and not the business side of it. I want to make sure we're doing both, because then I'm not leading anybody astray by telling them or giving them this sort of false hope dream that you could just vibe code and make a ton of money. I want to give real practical examples of how to do this, because when I was starting this stuff out, I remember having my app and I was like, how do I find people to use it? Where do I go? I'm sitting in my condo, looking out the window, and I'm thinking to myself, how do I find people to use my application? Where do I go? Do I go down the street and like knock on random businesses' door and ask them to join? And this was a hard concept for me to understand, because I just didn't have the foundations of how to reach people in the digital world. If you've never done it, it seems so obvious. You got to do outreach to people. But if you haven't done it, it's like, what do you do? Going forward, we're going to try to split the conversations into half and half. We're going to do half business, half technical. Therefore, when people join, they watch these videos in the future, there's always going to be a little bit of business and technical, because the group is called Vibe Code to Profit. That means we have to talk about the business side in addition to the coding side. And it's what I know best. And it's what I've been doing for most of my time. So yeah, okay, let's go write some code, because we're up on time and things. Actually, I didn't even open up the application from last week. Let me get that going right now. So if you just join in, we're building a email AI summarizer, and we're talking about how to set things up properly with authentication. We're going to tackle some of the authentication challenges, which is where we left off from last week, and see if we could get a working prototype that's going to read Gmail, pull information into it, and then summarize it with CloudFlare. So that's where we're at right now. So I need to open up VS Code and create a Frontend AI email summarizer. I'm just going to open up this folder. So I have a Monorepo here, but I'm going to open up just this folder directly, because it's actually easier to do it that way. So here, and Frontend and AI email summarizer, open there. So if you're new, again, we're kind of halfway through this application. So what I'm going to do is just going to get an overall summary of what's in the application. Oh, you know what? I don't have the latest here. Okay. I have to use the insider VS Code. I thought they said they deployed the latest. Maybe I could update it. Check for an update. Let's see if we could just check for an update. Welcome. No, you know what? Let's just use the insider. So VS Code Insider has some good features that is coming soon. I watched a launch last night or yesterday with them, and I thought they said that they released it already, but maybe it's just been slowly rolled out. So one of the features that VS Code now has is a plan-in feature, which is really cool because it helps you to think through the code a little more in detail. We're going to target this AI email summarizer project, and on the left-hand side here, my VS Code, we're going to click on plan. So this feature here. And I'm going to say, hey, can you just review my project and tell me where I'm at with it and what are the things that are left to be done based on my to-do list? My Whisper's not working. Let's quit it. Open it up again. By the way, I'm using Whisper. Using this tool here. It's called Whisper Flow. So I could just type. It's like, hey, can you review my tool? So I just have to press my function key and talk, and then it works properly. Hey, can you review this application, figure out what features are being currently implemented, and then give me a overview of what I need to do in order to launch the application. Thanks. So that's going to spin for a bit and do a quick review. The good news about doing the planning is the planning feature, which again, I'm in the Visual Studio Insider. So this has not been released to the full public as yet. Oh, well, I shouldn't say that. You could go download Visual Studio Insider and sign up for this build. You get the nightly builds on Visual Studio Insider. And this has some features that are really very valuable for vibe coding at this kind of level. Hopefully it's going to give me a summary understanding. We don't have a PRD in this document here, so we're going to try to get that going too, because that's the one thing that I haven't been doing. If you're new here are the things that you need to do if you're vibe coding for the very first time, building a sort of production level SaaS application, is you need a PRD document. So let's just ask ChatGPT in the quick model instant, what are the steps that I need to do in order to vibe code a proper application, PRD, feature documents, etc. Give me some examples. So if you're doing a vibe code application, one of the things that you need to make sure that you're doing is get a proper PRD. PRD stands for Project Requirements Document. If you're new and you don't know what that is, I got videos about it, so we won't go into too much deep in here. But getting yourself a PRD, which basically outlines sort of the problem, the vision, and the outcome. And then you want to have a feature document that has all of the features of the things that you care about to be able to properly code an application. And then you want to have you could have an architecture document and you could have a to-do list, right, of all the different things. Task list or a checklist, basically. These are sort of the things that are super recommended. So if you're in VS Code, you want to make sure that your GitHub Copilot instructions file, which we don't even have in this particular project here. What I'm going to do is create one after we go through this list. Plan to launch AI Summer application. Application features UI environment variables, public API domain, auth0, uninstall, app developer layer. So replace mock API calls with index search chat. Create a callback page to handle authentication. This is what I have so far, but I don't have those documents in here, like a PRD document. We're just going to add them because I didn't do it before. I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing every time. Can you create a docs folder and create a PRD specifically for this? And also we'll need a Copilot instructions file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an agent mode. I'm going to do the GitHub Copilot file differently. We'll get it to just create the PRD specifically for the documents because we didn't actually do that in the last video. Take a sip. If you're new on TikTok and wondering what we're doing, we're building an AI email summarizer application. You can watch the actual review on YouTube and follow along, or you could join our free vibe coded community. So at least you can learn how to actually vibe code for real, like build a real production app. We're all about building real applications over here. And honestly, I put out a video recently because I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of seeing people code applications in like 5 minutes and, launch it and, making millions. It's this fallacy that is being sold because people know that they can make quick money on telling people to buy my course on how to vibe code. The reality is that everybody knows, the people that actually knows this stuff knows that the AI they're good, but they're not that good. So you have to spend more granular time teaching and guiding the AI properly to get real results. I've been on a mission to change this narrative that vibe coding will just automatically, get you an app and you won't have any problems, etc. The goal is that you can build some kind of application that is scalable. That's the mission. That's the goal. Okay, so we're still waiting for the PRD document to be created. Looks like we got a slim audience, but that's okay. We're going to show up here every single week and we're going to write. So create a comprehensive PRD document covering exclusive summary, goals, KPI, technical details, 12 weeks roadmap, launch application. The document provides 12 weeks. I want this to be done today, buddy. Docs. So this is our PRD document here. And I'm not going to read through all of this. Technical details and success criteria. Right. Okay. So let's just say, can you create a to-do task list and a feature list? Separate documents, link them together also. This is super important. I want to make sure that every single time we do vibe coding, we actually do this because else the model strays off track after a while. The truth is, we should have done this last week when we were doing all this setup work, but I might have been too eager to get things going. All right, to vibe coding an application, I'm gonna have to learn how to go on TikTok at a different time from my YouTube time because there's conflicting goals here. Let's wait for this thing to load. So one of the things I've been noticing about 4.5 is once the context gets too big, it really slows down after a while. So I've seen this working and it just keeps going and going and going. So what I'm going to do is stop it and then start again because from experience, I know that it freezes. So I'm going to click continue, create a new thing, and then we're just going to paste that exact same thing again and just let it cook for the very first time because it definitely, I've noticed that consistently keeps happening, that the minute the context get a little bit too much, it just kind of freezes. Claude Sonnet 4.0 because it seems to have a better way of, it's not aggressive in the summarization is what I'm trying to say. It's significantly better when it comes to just not being as aggressive. So just a heads up for you guys. Let's see if this is better. Might be something with VS Code because it seems like it's just kind of spinning around here. So let's see. All right. So create. Okay. So it did create the doc. It did create the task. Yeah, there we go. Right. So it's much better now. Sure. What could go wrong? So this guy, and let's go with this. I got to do one more thing. I'm telling you, man, the Mac layout system is just horrible. No other word to describe it but horrible. Okay. So let's go build our AI summary application. So here. Right, we got a PRD, we got a feature document, and we have the features that it's going to build. We got the task list, which is a whole bunch of stuff. We'll see how far we get. We got our to-do list. The only one that I need now is just a GitHub Copilot instructions file. So we're going to create a new, we want to click on the gear here, and we want to do generate instructions, Copilot instructions. And again, I'm just going to tell it to link the PRD, the task, and every single thing to the GitHub Copilot instructions so it knows what to do. Super important. I also know we skipped a step last week and I want to make sure that I reinforce this over and over because this is the most critical part of any vibe coding application. If you're doing any of this stuff, you have to link them together. Super important. You don't do that, AI starts to sort of drift. You get into all these problems. So this at least allows the AI to essentially what you're doing in the background. One of the things that is fascinating about these AI models is that they actually don't know anything. It seems like they know a lot, but all they've been trained to do is correlate text from the real world with numbers to kind of find matching set of related numbers. And then they try to translate those numbers back into words, which makes sense for us. When you are chatting with the AI back and forth, the AI actually doesn't know any single thing about what you're doing. So you have to send your information in to the model with the context. And the context means the history of your conversation, your task list, your feature requests, so that it knows how to move to the next step. It's kind of fascinating because it will be the equivalent of a human being having amnesia. So when you talk to them, or memory loss, you have to give them every single thing they need to remember who you are to have that conversation. And then when you go away and you come back again, they don't remember any single thing. So you have to give it all over again. But you might bring more information the second time. And that's basically what we're doing over and over with the LLM. It's very fascinating. Okay, so we got this worked out. We got our feature document. We got our PRD document. We got our task list document. We got our to-do list document. So with that, we can do the GitHub Copilot instructions file. What I didn't do is link them together. So we're just going to tell it, can you link those together? So can you ensure that there's a linkage between the GitHub Copilot instructions file, the feature file, the PRD, the task list, and this to-do? And so ensure that also there's an instruction so that whenever you finish a task, you update the task list so we can keep track of the progress we're making. So that step that I just described there is the important bit, which allows the AI to basically keep track of its own progress. Very, very important. There's more complex ways of doing this, but in a structured approach, I find this to be the simplest and easiest for especially entry-level people to kind of understand. How do you keep the AI on track, which is something that, if you're there, you'll struggle with for sure, right? So if you're new to the channel, you're watching on YouTube, we're building an AI email Summarizer, welcome. If you got some specific questions, just ask me. Not a problem. Small group today. All right, so let's move forward now. We got our email summarizer. We also had our Auth0 because we got to do some things with security. Actually, let me just do one more thing here. Let's get it deployed to CloudFlare so it can show up at the top. Can you deploy these changes to CloudFlare? We're just going to deploy it right away. This monorepo is properly set up with CloudFlare. We have a Wrangler JSON-C file. So it's going to do a button deploy, and then we're going to go look at that in CloudFlare. And while that's happening, we need to pull up Auth0 because Auth0 is what we did authentication. And we also need to pull up Google authentication because we're going to be reading emails. So we need to pull up Gmail here. Right. So authentication, basically what we're going to do is we're going to try to read this inbox and we're going to summarize these emails and we're going to try to triage the emails properly, right? We might even look into how we could respond to the emails altogether. So the thing that we need to remember is that we're using Auth0 as the authentication layer or the identity provider that we're doing a dance with between Auth0 and CloudFlare Auth0 and Gmail. Just to recap, because this stuff here, it gets complicated and I want to make sure that people are following what's going on. Auth0 is our identity provider. Not bad. That's our shield for authentication provider, right? So this is Auth0, UTH0. Auth0 is keeping our username and password. So username, password, okay? And what we're doing is we have a social provider, which is Gmail. So this provider is responsible for the actual security because you own this email. Super important. So what we're basically doing is we're going to register an app that will have access to email to be able to read the emails out of the Gmail inbox. And that app registration is going to be registered with Auth0 also. And our app will be able to use that registration to access email, right? Like that's more or less the dance that's happening. There's obviously some more steps, but that's kind of the gist of it. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that, let me see if you're able to deploy. No, I just want you to finish the project deployment and then let me know when it's done. What? There's a warning about node compatibility not being enabled typically. Fine for static. No, just finish the deployment, man. What are you doing? Right. And again, summarizer, right? So keep that in mind. And it just requires a little bit of dance. So that app registration that I was talking about here has to be done in Google Console. So console.cloud.google.com. And if you go to the credentials tab, no. Where is it? Sorry, Auth screen. Oh no, I'm in the wrong account. So here we go. That's one client. Let's just go here, go to credentials. So we only have make.com, authentication screen. Okay, so we didn't actually create it. I thought we created the app last week, but I might have audience. Let me just make sure. Okay, I don't think we actually created the app. Interesting. I thought we did. Might be going crazy here. We got to do this step over to create this app that I'm talking about. I thought we did that. I have to go look this step up because I keep forgetting the procedures. We had this where, let's just do a search email. Try it. I find this search to be very slow in ChatGPT. It's really annoying. There we go. This guy here. Okay, so let's go through the steps, make sure I got it right because I kind of, right. So it was configure Auth0 social network. Yeah, so let me just go to Auth0 dashboard authentication social. So let's double check that we got that. So Auth0 applications. So this is our social email. We have to put in our client ID and our secret. I could have sworn that we did this last week. We need the client ID. We need the client set scopes to include email read only, right? Make the connection enabled. Make sure to connect to your app, right? So now we have, right. So that was one part. And then I had the test flow on how to do it, how to connect emails. If you prepare separation Auth0 for login, go directly to Auth0. Where is it? Google Console, Gmail, screen here, and user type external. App info plus email. We need to add test users for testing mode. So create a Auth0 client web app. Right. So scope. Right. So Auth0 scope. So app info. Where are you? Create Auth0 client. So we enable the GPI. Let me just make sure we did this already because I know we did this, but for some reason I might have done this in the wrong account. That's why I'm kind of confused right now. So enable API service. So we need to enable Gmail. That's the first thing. Gmail API. Yes. So it's already enabled. Now we can manage it. Then we can go here. There we go. And then we can do user type external. So here we're going to create a client. The type will be external. So web application. We're going to call it AI summarizer. The origins, we're going to have to come back to it, but let's just do this right now because we're going to end up in a situation where CloudFlare is going to tell us one thing. Did it get deployed? Yes, it did. Okay, so we're going to copy this URL and go back to here, put JavaScript origin for use with request from browser. So we're going to use this and redirect URL here. Click create. And now we need the client ID. So that goes into this client ID here. So that goes into this and oops. Okay, so we have our client email and we have our secret. And we're going to select the email read only and Gmail metadata for now. So we're going to click on save. So now we have a email provider. How do we know? This connection is using Auth0 development keys. Auth0 development term for testing, not for recommended for thing. That's okay. Copy the comment, copy the secret. Why does this matter? Okay. So now we're going to go to configure the social method. And so configure Auth0 social. Yeah, we did that part already. Auth0 read only. So we're good there. Importing connections option, store tokens, save ID token, authentication dashboard. So applications and then open your app. So now the question is, which one is our app? Was it this one? Yeah, okay, let's go with this one. I think this is the one that we're using. Code in dashboard. I have to put a callback URL. So callback URL will be this guy here. We really should be separating this, but we're going to try to get this up going first and then come back to it later. The crazy thing about Auth0 is that no matter how many times you do it, it's like keep forgetting the same steps. See, AUTH callback and then allowed logout URL. So we're going to put this here, allowed web origin, this one, and that's about it for now. Can you ensure that we have a path that's going to handle the callback from Auth0? So we need this callback, right? Because what's going to happen is when we do the security dance back and forth, we're going to need to ensure that Auth0 is able to call our application to send the security code. So it's like this. Every time I have to do this, it's just one of those things where it's like, listen, I've been doing this for a while and I still don't know Auth0 that well. Okay, it's just one of those things that you take with a grain of salt, that the true security people actually know what they're doing, because, you know, I've even heard that the actual guy that wrote the actual paper for the authentication specification is not happy with how things turned out. So if he's not happy, I don't know who else will be. When your app needs access to email is going to say, I don't recognize this app. So it's going to send a consent screen to the user to say, hey, do you recognize this person? And that person will say, oh, yes, I recognize that app. It's the AI email summarizer. So you say, okay, that's cool. Then the dance is going to happen where you have Auth0 here. Then basically what's going to happen is it will send a code to Auth0, if I remember this correctly. Okay. It's going to go back to Auth0. Auth0 is going to, the Gmail is actually who's the one, which is really thing. But our application is going to get a code after this consent form happens. We're going to get a code back into our application. Okay. And then we're going to take that code and we're going to make another API call to get back a token. And that token is what we can then use to make requests to the Gmail API on our behalf. This is the part that just gets me confused every single time. And every time I have to go back to the documentation to remember how this stuff works. Because once you set it up and you get it right, and hopefully you get it right, you don't have to do it again. But then if you have to keep explaining it, you forget. And that's what's been happening to me over and over again. The bottom line is we're going to get authorization from the user to access their inbox, which then we will get a code, and that code will say, yes, you can now use this code to get an authorization token. So the real question is, who's asking for the token? And right now, because we're using a social provider, it's Auth0 that's doing that work for us. So Auth0 will not put the Google refresh token inside the ID by default. You retrieve it secretly by your API, Auth0 API management. So create a machine-to-machine API, Auth0 dashboard application. So yes, we have Auth0 application. We do have a machine-to-machine. Where is it? Backend registration. Yes. So basically, Auth0 is not communicating directly with Google. We have to then probe Auth0 to do the authentication. Auth0 will do that back and forth to get that code, but for some reason Auth0 keeps it in their own thing. And our app have to then call Auth0 directly to say, hey, can you get that token? And then we can make that call. So it's just a little bit extra layer inside of there. Just keep that in mind. And going forward, what I'm going to do is a whole series on this whole security thing so we can get some guidance on it based on your use case. I have Better Auth that I'm planning to do. Better Auth is one of the more popular ones that is up and coming right now. I use Auth0. I want to do a Microsoft one and I want to do a Google one. So at least there's some variations in this like type of security stuff. And then once I do that, once I finish with that series, I'm just going to point you to that video. It's like, go watch that video. It'll tell you all you need to know about security. So Auth with M2M API management access, response tokens. Got to make sure we have API management access here. This is our application. It's machine to machine. And we want to make sure the permissions are set correctly. API management access authorized. There we go. So that's perfect. So Auth0 recommend and securely use Gmail with tokens. We use the Gmail to access tokens in the endpoint. Test flow from your app, trigger Auth0 your login with thing. Consent there. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna test to see if, because I don't know if I have every single thing set up, because we did last week do the set up the authentication part. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to our application and I'm gonna say, can you run it and then ensure that we have a login? Can you use this instructions and then ensure that whenever you load up the application, we have a login page that will trigger so that I could trigger authentication with my Gmail application by redirecting me over to Auth0 to do this whole flow. And we need to test that this is working. So make the changes accordingly, fact check that we have all of the features to make security work so that we can get access to the Gmail. On the callback, we'll need to have some sort of display to indicate a successful login. Review the details and let me know what we need to do. This is where AI really shines. Yes, a lot of people say it's not secure. However, it just gets you through some of these hurdles that is just really, really technical. That allows you to get right. Doesn't mean you don't have to do security checks. Doesn't mean you have to do security scan. But at least it's doing sort of the bulk of the grunt work. Because the truth is, I don't remember where we left off in this app last week. And I don't remember whether I added the security codes already, which I don't think I did. So let's see. Is there an env file in here? I don't think there is. And then let me reload. So this is the summarizer here. Okay, so this summarizer. If I go to settings, I should see, did I add the variables and secrets? Okay, so I don't have any machine-to-machine secrets here. So I'm going to need to add those in, but we'll get it to give me the instructions on what to do here. So let's just see correctly, because it needs to create the local. Basically, we need to, in order for us to connect to Auth0, we need to have those secrets inside of the bindings here. So let's just see, based on my analysis, here's what needs to be implemented. Frontend has a mock Auth0, but no real Auth0 thing. So we need to make that. The callback page exists, but doesn't handle tokens. Right, no login page, no route protection. Current Auth0 configuration in Nux, but not used. Create a login page that triggers Auth0 universal. Yes. Connect with Google Auth. Request this token. Token management. Backend token for exchange. Auth0 tokens. Retrieve Google refresh token. Yes. Store the tokens securely in a backend database. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna have to store them in a key vault. Auth0 must enable store access token and refresh token on Google connection. So store access token and store refresh token on Google. Okay, so we need to just make sure that that's done. So in here on the social side, it might be, but we just got to double check it. So basically what we're saying is that once Auth0 makes that connection, it's going to store the token locally. So this is permissions. This is basically the permissions that we sync user profile at login application. Maybe it's just set automatically. We'll find out in 2 minutes. So Auth0 must enable. So we got that already. MTM backend needs backend validation. We have the front end and then we have the backend. Look at this. Under backend, this is the one I was supposed to be using for the backend type of dance. So you know what I have to do? I have to go to the Monorepo because this is going to make some mistakes because it's not considering the backend. It's thinking that this is the only project that exists. This is how you learn. So hopefully I'm making some sense here. I'll tell you what's going on in a bit. Let me just put this in the right path. Okay, so let me just tell it to review my backend AI email summarizer and my front AI email summarizer. And then I'm going to tell it, so can you review my backend AI email summarizer and my front-end email summarizer and ensure that we're on the right path to getting this done correctly. I made some mistakes by making the front end try to implement the machine-to-machine part of the authentication, which should not be the case. The backend should have that logic. So just double check that we're doing the right thing. What is the front end for the email summarizer? The front end to the application connects to the D1, and all it's doing is just reading the summary information from D1 database. Nothing else. We now have a backend. Oh, I gotta upgrade for diagrams. Really? My goodness. You want me to upgrade for a gear? Sorry, I'm just using this for the first time. We could use a cloud. So this is a worker. I was doing too many things at the same time. I just kind of completely forgot about what we're doing on the backend side here. So I apologize for this confusion. The backend is what's actually doing the vectorization. The backend is also responsible for dealing with this dance with Zero, the app, and pulling the data from Gmail. Okay. The front end has nothing to do with that part. That dance, by the way, is also happening with Auth0. So let's just put this as Auth0. Your app is registered with CloudFlare, right? Very easy to mix up the steps. So I'm going to try to unwind what I said earlier. It's email, Google Client. Google Client is registered with Auth0. Auth0 has a application, right? So there's two applications technically. There's an Auth0 application. There's a Gmail application. They're just a way to have multiple programs use the same set of permissions. Think of applications like a group. I give a group of people access to this house. So the app in this case is like a group. They're calling it application, but really it's just a group. Why? Because I could have multiple apps use the same application. So it's really just a grouping. It seems complicated, but that's basically how to describe it. So Auth0 has an application, and that application, when we do this back and forth dance, every single thing I mentioned about the key is valid, right? So Google is going to give us a code. After the user confirms the authorization code, that authorization code Auth0 will use to get the token, okay? And Auth0 is going to store that token locally inside of Auth0. And then my application is registered with that application in Auth0. So it's registered with, just think of it as a group. It's registered with this machine to machine. So what I'm going to do behind the scenes is make a separate call and say, hey, can you just get me that token? So I'm going to call, because when Auth0 gets the token, it only stores it locally. It doesn't share it with the application. So I have to make a separate call to Auth0 to get that token and then bring it back into my application so that I could then make an API call to Gmail. So that's the part that I missed, because I'd done this work before to set up that client side of things. And what was happening, I was only working on this part here, and I couldn't for the life of me. I was like, I know I did some stuff with registration before, but I was working on the wrong thing, right? The front end application is what's going to happen is once this summarization happens, when we read the email, we're just going to dump it into the vectorized database, and we're going to dump it into the D1 database, right? So that's what we're going to do. This email here is only going to be responsible for reading from this. It's not even going to be, for the most part, going to the vector database. We might do some things with that, but for the most part, the front end is kind of isolated from all of that backend infrastructure stuff that's happening. So where we're at right now is we want to make sure that this Cloudflare worker will connect to this application Auth0 and get the token when we send it back. That's what we want to make sure that we're able to do. So let's see what you have here. Your AI email summarizer had the classic front end trying to do backend auth mistake, right? This is a really big problem. In fact, this is a security problem. I want to be clear. It's probably a lesson that I want to make sure I teach going forward, which is how do you ensure that your secrets for your application doesn't end up in your front end, because it gets very confusing, especially with Cloudflare. When you do a deployment, you're deploying both front end and back end to the same worker, and they're behaving like it's all back end, but it's not all back end stuff. There's front end, which means that there's data that's going to sit on the client computer. And it's very possible that that client can have all of the secrets sitting there. So yeah, that's a real problem. Let me diagram it just a little bit more to make sure that everybody understands this. This is a mistake that I've made as a seasoned developer that you will almost certainly make. And let's talk about it for a bit. It's important. It's so important that I'm doing it at the risk of not finishing this thing. So let's do this. When you build an app, any app, it could be React, ACT, it could be Vue, right? I don't know, Svelte, SVELT, it could be Blazor. Blazor might be a little different, so maybe we'll take that one out because Blazor has both client side and front side. No, all of these are basically client side. When you build an app, any app, it doesn't really matter. You build an app, you got a bunch of bundlers, but we're in bleeding edge, cutting edge here, and basically Vite is taking over Webpack. VITE. All they're doing is basically just giving you HTML. Okay, and what they do is they inject the JavaScript into the page and they inject CSS into the page. CSS, right? Really and truly, this is just a compression. It's a zip file. When you're building, you're using all kinds of different tools and you have all different types of files and you have all different TypeScript type of stuff. TypeScript does not run in the browser. So this creates this kind of weird illusion that when you do a deployment, your data is going to Cloudflare in one stroke, especially if you're doing the React so Next.js. I actually believe this is one of the most confusing thing, Next.js. I think it's one of the most confusing thing because when you actually do the deployment and you do that packaging, it's two separate things happening on the back end. One is it deploys your backend and it deploys a front end. And if you don't know what I'm talking about here, you're going to have to go watch my foundations course because it'll help you to understand what we're talking about. But really and truly, this is a server and this is a client. If you go in there, it talks about how request flows work, And if you go in here, it talks about client and server. It's designed to be extremely simple, no technical knowledge required, so you can understand the basics. And go watch this if you're having any problem following. Do the course. I designed it so that it could be, you could watch it in like under 8 minutes, roughly, if you notice. Well, let's call it under 10 minutes on average. The videos are very short. I call 10 minutes video short because normally I do like 20 minutes, 30 minutes video. So it's very short. I wanted to do very, very specific bite-sized information so you could just watch one little small thing and just get it. Okay. So go watch that if you're trying to figure out how this stuff works or you're not following along. But it's important to get that because these modern development systems, what they do is when you do a deployment, they automatically do the deployment for the back end and they automatically do the deployment for the front end. And the front end client, what normally with security, this is where a big security flaw is, sometimes people inject security that should be on the back end on the front end. In other words, they put their security keys, their secrets, in the client side. Any secrets should only stay on the server side. You should never expose it on the client side. So this is a really big problem, but it's easy of a mistake to make if you're a new developer because your brain doesn't know how to split where the information is going on your front end, the way how these libraries work. And again, this is due to I would call this the curse of the modern web because there's a lot of abstraction that's happening and it actually creates a confusion, right? Because of the way how these work in Next.js, where does the server side code go and where does the client side code go? In terms of the directory. Server-side rendering runs only on the server. Yeah, so /server API. So any single thing in this server API goes on the back end, right? Routes, middleware, all this type of stuff is running on the back end. And then all these client pages, composables running on the front end. So it seems like when you do a deployment, it just goes up into one simple, right? It's all going to the same place, but it's actually going to two separate computers. Client side, server side. They're two separate things. Do not get confused by them. In this particular case, Cloudflare Worker is serving both the client side code and the backend code. It gets confusing because what Cloudflare has done is merge these two together, which makes it even more confusing. This worker is the reason why it's called worker and pages. Pages is the client side and workers is the backend. Workers is the server and pages is the client. But when you do a deployment, it goes into one thing. Right? It's possible that from the one thing you could serve both client and server. That's kind of the issue here. The mistake that I made was I was deploying secrets to the front end, and that's a problem. So that's what we have to kind of untangle a little bit here. So the secrets for the zero has to stay on this backend stuff, right? So this is the client again, right? This is the client and this is the server, okay? Please don't make that mistake. Very important that you remember that. Machine to machine, that's what this means. And the machine to machine architecture was trying to call API management, which is wrong The backend is using direct Google Auth instead of using Auth0 social connection properly. Wrong token flow. Frontend is trying to get Gmail tokens instead of backend. Missing authentication. So fixes applied. So simplified frontend auth now only handles user auth via Auth0. Perfect. Login. Moved MPN M2M machine logic backend auth service now properly calls authentication management, and then corrected token flow. Backend retrieves them from email API. Yes. Added proper JWT verification. Backend validates token correctly. Good. Frontend calls Auth0. Auth0 is going to try to log in. Then that's going to give me your authentication. And backend is going to try to call the API management, which is going to get the token, which is going to get the Gmail access. Add another button so that we could trigger from the front end, having the backend call into Gmail to retrieve one email and then return the status. We need to ensure that we have enough login so that we can see where things are breaking. After we return back to the front end page, we're just going to trigger one button. It'll say, hey, can you go try and get the Gmail details? And then it's going to go make the call to Gmail. It's going to then return the results. And then it's going to report to me what the status, right? So again, the front end never calls Gmail directly. Just want to be clear with that. You're going to leak secrets in the browser. I can right click and I can go to inspect and I see the code for the entire application. I could go to sources, see the code there. I could go to network. I could go to applications. I could see every single thing that's being stored, cookies, all that type of stuff. See this here, right? OpenID. Where's the token? Is there a token inside here? So they might have the token. So normally you have like it's supposed to store in a secure cookie. But the point is that I can see everything. If you're storing any single thing on the front end, I can access it, any application. It doesn't matter what it is. It's all inside of that GPT extension cookies, right? So these are all the cookies that are stored. It knows my name, some other ID information, right? Like somewhere inside of here, there's an authentication, maybe AUID. So those things are stored in the front end. So you don't want to do that, because that's the problem. All right. So hopefully that makes some sense. We're going to make sure that this is put together. Then we're going to try to push this up and test it. See if we could get this working before the next half an hour. If you're on TikTok, hi, how are you doing? The details are on YouTube. If you're watching, you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. What the hell is this guy talking about? Go to my YouTube channel and you'll be able to see what we're doing. Basically, we're doing vibe coding, learning how to build an actual production grade application so that we can launch it. And this is part of a weekly ongoing session about vibe coding. Now that I know how to put a banner up, hopefully you guys are seeing the banner properly and you're able to say, okay, it seems like something I'm interested in doing. I think what I'm going to do is go on TikTok on a daily basis independently of YouTube. TikTok is hard. Today's a slow week though. Not too many people are on, but the content must be recorded and people are going to watch it on their own time. That's the most important thing. If you missed the first part, you could go to YouTube and watch the live. Within 24 hours, the live is going to be taken down. The video is going to be chopped up and edited properly, and only the good parts, removing all of my random craziness, is going to be uploaded to YouTube. Prioritize your comments. Mute. So not a lot of people join in. TikTok really wants you to like invite people to co-host, eh? Just keeps prompting, invite this person. Invite this person. It's like half of the feed is basically invite because the whole thing by itself. It's an experiment. Yeah. Okay, I think we're almost there. If you're joining on YouTube, we're just wrapping up here for the very first time. We're wrapping up. We're building a vibe coded application, all with CloudFlare. We just went through a whole bunch of dance around security and how to access your email using CloudFlare workers. We're just wrapping things up so we can deploy and do some testing. Feel free to stick around or watch the recording. Say hi. Okay, ready to test. Let's do a deployment and then we'll test it on CloudFlare. If there's any environment variables that I need to add, let me know also. Do a deployment for both the front end and the back end. So we're just going to do a deployment and then we're going to try to run tests. We're going to look at the logs, see if it's actually working correctly, see what problems we run into. And then from there, we're going to make adjustments accordingly. This is week 2 of this. So if you're new and you're just following along for the very first time, it might be hard to keep up with where we are. That being said, I do have a vibe coding course on my channel. CloudFlare Vibe Coding Foundations 101 prerequisite. This is a prerequisite to my real CloudFlare course. If you're new to vibe coding and not a technical person, this might be for you. If you are a technical person, there's more technical details coming along pretty soon. If you haven't joined the community, join my free vibe coding community where we got 24 members and we got one course inside of there, and we got people sharing their ideas and what they're working on, and I can then connect with you on a one-on-one basis. We could do group calls and share sort of the challenges that you're having in, share the experience, etc. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to join or say hi. All right, doing the deployment. Now we're going to do some testing, and then we're going to wrap this baby up. Now let me deploy the backend first. AI email backend. Yeah, so the good thing about Wrangler is that it just kind of takes care of a lot of this stuff. In fact, it could actually do the secrets as well too. All right. Next week, I'm going to be focusing specifically on CloudFlare Essentials. That's the video that I'm working on, building the CloudFlare Essentials. If you guys want me to do more on security and building out more apps, I'm happy to do it. Or we could do more presentational style where we talk about high-level concepts. I'm going to put out a poll on this so that we could get some feedback where you guys want me to do a little more business stuff, or you want me to try to talk about the code a little bit more, talk about sort of like technical or business, or both. We could do both. Cool. Okay, still being deployed, so we're waiting. So I have a low stream count today because I'm competing. Competing is a word, is relative. I think I'm competing with Microsoft has a live event right now. So there's the .NET conference that's going on right now, by the way. And I pay attention to whatever gets launched by Microsoft, because I'm a .NET fan or a .NET developer by trade. They do these 24-hour sort of like deployment. So they do they're doing net sort of everything. Deployment, .NET 10, talking about building on Aspire, building devs. I saw a login page. My point is, I'd like to believe that this 117 people watching live is competing with my stream. Clearly they're winning. Who else is on live right now? Turn AI into cash. Okay, that's cool. We got using GPT 5.1 apps live. I stopped chasing views this way. I'm not saying I won't ever do a video on GPT, but I was like, you know what? GPT 5 doesn't seem to be doing... First of all, GPT is not doing any single thing for me right now. So I have decided that I don't even care, because Claude Sonnet is solid for me right now. It's working. Every single time I try GPT, it fails. So yeah, we're not going to keep doing that anymore. We're just going to skip it. I think this thing is stuck. Let me do a new window. Can you deploy my AI backend and AI summary frontend? Yeah, it's definitely stuck. Who else do we have here? You guys want to challenge? This guy, insane. I watch him almost every day, but I do his workouts and oh my goodness. Just go follow this guy while we wait on the AI to come through. He like, his energy is just, yeah. Guys does like 400 push-ups in the morning, 4 a.m. and then 4 p.m. every single day. Talk about dedication. Creating and developing a website with minimum technical knowledge. So who are we competing with? We're competing with this guy. 4 people inside of there. This guy has 62 watching because they want to know all the stuff about GPT. I'm just curious what's on the internet right now. Who am I competing with? Solve puzzles and game entertainment. Who else am I competing with? Flat Bridge, Jamaica. Crazy. No walls, nothing. That's all the live that's happening right now. Design, track week. Frontend is configured to use variables, not public URL or local host. I need to set public URL. Not a lot of lives today. People are exercising, politics, people are watching games. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so we got a deployment on the front end. Set up authentication if needed. So your AI summarizer is now live. Okay, we're going to jump to that. Initiate database for storing data. So open up, let's see what we got here. Okay, first things first, when I go to the home page, I see nothing. How do I get the login going? How do I connect? What do I do? How do I authenticate? Where's my button to see after I call back to test the Gmail integration? So I'll help you set up authentication flow, create the necessary UI components with AI. Let me first check the current state of the front end application. Let me check the current environment variables. This is why I don't like to see when people say you just let the AI run and do its thing. You have to babysit it. You have to watch it. In fact, I've been getting so religious about the way that I work with AI that I don't try to do 10 things. I just focus on one and get it done and then move on to the next, because I find that my brain is not capable of running 5 or 6 things simultaneously. People say let the AI run a whole bunch of stuff in the background. The only time that I do that is when, for example, yesterday I was getting my kid together to go to school, and while I was helping him, I had the AI doing some stuff in the background. By the time I came back, the AI was finished with the work it was doing, and then I continued. But when I'm sitting behind a computer and trying to get things done, I don't do that, because you have to have some level of mental tracking of the code. And that's really important. Yeah, it just doesn't work the way that you anticipate it will work. And then you don't know what went wrong because you weren't necessarily tracking it. Going back and reading all those files is just a pain that you could have just avoided by just sitting there and just spending the time. Not the app development asked for launching tips. Who is this? I don't know what this is. Hopefully we're going to get this up. Waiting for the AI. We do have a lot of interaction. I'm just going to wait for the AI to finish it. Okay, we have some time. Oopsie. If you're on TikTok and you just join in, we're just finishing up here. We just launched a AI email summarizer, and we're just basically trying to test it. North America, US, Eastern US, yes. I'm going to try to vibe code, and I wonder if SnapSuite has it. Okay, so we have a homepage is now functioning, being deployed. Let's go see what we got here. Refresh. Still don't see anything, buddy. Oh, you know what? The link changes because it's giving me the direct link instead of the generic link. Oops. Let me do it this way. Every time you deploy the Cloudflare, you get one of these unique URLs. But the best thing to do is just use the default main URL all the time. It'll always go to the latest stuff. So we don't have this problem. So we got an error here that has to do with hydration. Can you turn off the front-end server-side rendering? I normally tend to just disable server-side rendering on any of my front-end applications. The reason for doing that is I want to ensure that my back-end and my front-end are completely separate, completely independently, right? Just going back to here, where we have React, Vue, and Svelte, right? All three of these different documents here. I tend to let the bundler not have anything like, so again, if you're going through Webpack or you're going through Vite and it creates your bundle, I never, from the application, generate any backend code. I just don't do that. What I normally do is have a completely different application that has all of my backend logic that I point to, because I find merging my frontend and backend sort of a little confusing. There's some benefits to it because you have every single thing in one place and you could just sort of iterate from that perspective. But coming from a more traditional world where if you're building a scalable architecture, you got to separate these things. I tend to just keep them separate, because when you separate them, then you have isolated concerns that you can work on. That's super important, and that's basically what I do for all my things. So there's no point in me having hydration and all this stuff here. So deployment successful. Let me just server-side rendering. Yeah. So now I've disabled server-side rendering. It did a deployment again. So now in theory, if I go back to this guy here and I do a refresh, we should get better results. Yeah. Why am I not seeing any single thing? Not even logs. What's going on here? Let me do this incognito, because one of the problems is that I find that, let's see. Oh, interesting. Just a blank page. Currently seeing a blank page on my front end. What's going on? Can you put some logs in the console so I can check and see what's going on? Yeah, but anyway, the point is I always sort of disable server-side rendering. Other people might have other strong opinions about this, but again, I'm not a traditional front-end developer. I'm mostly a back-end developer that has evolved to doing front-end and full stack in every single way. And I know that if you're building a large-scale application, these things have to be separated. That's not to be confused with having every single thing in a mono repo, which is still important, right? Having your code front end and your back end in a monorepo is super valuable, super important. When you do your deployments, you're going to deploy all in separate services, back-end services, front-end services, etc. That's really valuable. You can see all the code in one place, but not necessarily have all of the code merge onto one application. It's a subtle difference, but it's a big difference. We're going to make sure that we always preach that. And while I'm doing this here, maybe what I'll show you guys is how I do my deployments on the back end with GitHub. I'll pull up GitHub to show you how my monorepo is set up. So here I have a monorepo for my main project. It has several different sections. It has an apps folder with quite a few apps inside. It has an API folder with containers, workers, functions, right? It has some clients folders. It has the database folder. It has a docs folder. It has a scripts folder. It has a build folder. It has a packages folder, etc. So what it's basically doing, the way how it's set up is that it just monitors just that folder. And if that folder had any change inside of it, it will do a deployment on that folder specifically. So The GitHub actions are designed specifically to monitor the individual folder of that project and then do a deployment properly. And this is the right and correct way to do things. This way, you're not forced to deploy your front end and your back end in order to get your application to work, right? Like it's possible that you might have a break and change on the back end and still can't keep your front end up. But if you have every single thing merge into one, it really becomes hard and problematic for you to do consistent deployments in micro doses. Hopefully that makes sense. If you're new on YouTube, I see you got a couple people just joined. We're just wrapping up right now. Basically just trying to test the deployment of this application. We're going to see if it actually works. Can you run the front end locally and test it? I seem to be getting some errors here. Need to get it sorted out. We're just at the testing phase right now, just trying to get it running, see if we could get it going here. We have kind of done all the work to get our front end, our API integration going with email at 0. What we're going to do is test it and make sure that all the pieces are working correctly. We're just waiting for it to finish its task so that we could actually start to test it. And we were running into some problems. If you're new, say hi. If you want to know more about me, join our community, Vibe Code to Profit. And it's a free community right now. And can't guarantee it'll be free forever, but it's free for now. So join the community. And if you got questions about Vibe Coding, you need help, guidance, how to build a scalable application, book a call with me. Links are in the community for that. The goal is Vibe Code to Profit. So we're always about how do you build an application, but not only build it from a technical standpoint, how do you launch it? How do you think about launching? Today we actually talked a little bit about how to think about your launching an application and what are the pieces that you need to sort of consider. And every week we're here from 1 to 4 p.m. And we're going to do a little bit of business at the start of each call. Then we're going to do technical on the back end. So come for the front end, come for the back end of the call, or come for the entire thing if you can. Stick around on a Friday afternoon with me. Or you could just watch the recording of the live session that's edited and trimmed down so that all the silence and the unnecessary parts are taken out. Let's see if we can get this bad boy to run. It's not showing me anything on the page and not being seen any console logs either. So starting localhost not found. So front end is on 3000. Front end is on 3000. We got a bit of a problem that I need to just get debugged so we can move forward here. We see experimental API key loop change. Few failed to resolve app header. Let me just enter this. I think it's just not picking up this error here. So gonna have to babysit it a little bit. Can you check my front end? This is the problem that I'm having. Yeah, so just got to feed it a little bit here. This is where the AI kind of falls short a little bit, right? Because it actually knows how to solve this problem, but it's not deterministic. It's not the same thing that you put in every single time. It's not going to give you the same set of results every time. So as a result, you end up sort of this weird loop where you have to keep experimenting. And also you have to be able to at least do some debugging to kind of see what the problem is, right? Like, so if you notice, I've been almost 20 minutes on this one problem where it just couldn't figure out what the issue is, just kept showing me the same thing over and over. So eventually you got to go into the console, feed it the error message, give it the details, and then look at saying, I can see the issue. You have both a app and a file regular structure, pages, blah, 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 right? Like it's just getting confusing. So it's just causing some problems. So you just have to have some skill set to kind of understand where the problems are. And actually that's going to be one of the videos that we're going to do also is, how to debug an application. How do you vibe code and debug an application? I remember when I was starting out, like debugging and vibe coding, it was just like, what is going on? I actually don't know what's going on here. So let's see. Okay. So let's see if the one is, let's see if it's done. So 3001. So let's just do it. Let's just test it, make sure that it's actually doing the right thing before we actually deploy here. So 3001. Okay. A little bit more progress. So auth me fetch no response. So that's good. Let me just make sure that it's doing the right thing. This is good. So let's go back here, drop this in there to make sure that I address some of the issues. So you can see your front end is trying to connect to the backend API connection refused. That's fine. Can you do a deployment of both the front end and the backend for the AI summary and make sure that the front end, once deployed, knows how to call the backend, like the correct URL. Okay, so we're up on time, but I'm going to try to see if we could at least test this thing, see if we could get it going before we close things off. We got a couple more people that just joined recently. Welcome. If you're new here, say hi. And if you're wondering what the hell we're doing, we're building an AI email summarizer that's going to read your email and then use CloudFlare to summarize it. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. We're here every Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. talking about vibe coding and CloudFlare and business and launching apps. So we are doing the deployment, and once this deployment is finished, we'll be able to do some testing and hopefully see some good errors that puts us in the right direction. So the backend course has been configured to include the front end. Fantastic. That's what we want to see. So we're going to, I joined back around 50 minutes ago. You look tired now. That's funny. Yeah, you know what? I am a little tired today. That's true. I was up until 11 p.m. last night. Got up at 11, worked until the morning hours, slept for about 2 hours again, and then started again. Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. That's funny. So anyway, you came for the good part because we're just doing a test now to see if the entire thing is actually launched and working online. So here we have that. Let me just see if the backend is finished, and then we're going to do a little bit of testing. I'm just recording a video. It's going to be on the internet. Somebody's going to watch it and get value in the future. These videos are going to go out. Somebody's going to get value from it, and then we're going to keep growing slowly over time. And then we're just going to take over the world because that's what we're here about. Funny enough, I was watching the growth curve of Python. If you look at the growth curve of Python over the last 20 years, it's been extremely slow and thing. While all the other languages come up and down, whatever, Python's just been an upward trend over, and then suddenly it's like they're one of the number one languages. People are like, oh, why is Python so popular? It's because it was growing over time consistently, and it's just slowly gaining traction. Same thing you could say about Postgres database. I didn't know that Postgres was an open source database, and to this day not controlled by any single large corporation. They're independent in every single way of the word. It's a community-driven effort. I find that fascinating. Moment of truth. Let's pull up our CloudFlare dashboard, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into metrics. He knows what he's doing, man. It's a great framework, and it's fantastic. So how do I... Okay, where's my logs again? Oh my goodness. CloudFlare to keep changing things on me here. Where is my logs? Metrics. Custom domain settings. You know what? I just realized that this is actually the pages. Doesn't matter. We're going to ignore this for now. I'm actually deployed on cloud. This is the older deployment for CloudFlare. Just started. Cool. It's a great framework. It's fantastic. Let's just do this. We're not going to look at logs. We're just going to pretend like this is going to work the first time. Of course it's going to work. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, click. Oh, your host tenant is wrong. The simple errors. We need to give it the tenant. Okay, fair enough. Cool. I'll take it. Let's go back to auth0 and make sure that we have the right host. Where is where? How do we get the host again? Oh, it has to be here. And we're going to say the front end or the back end is complaining that the host, auth0 host, is wrong. Do we need to put this in an environment variable, or do you have it hard coded? This is the host. Not a bad error, but an annoying one. So Nox application domain. So let me just check. So is it putting it in the domain there? Yeah, I think it is, right? Let's just see. Let's see. That just started. Silly mistake. Client ID. I think it'll just deploy it by itself. Let me just update that here so the front end config to match. Yeah, it should just redeploy it by itself. And let me just make sure. If I go back up here and I go back to CloudFlare, where are you? This is the back end. So here, this is how you know the difference when you're on the front end and the new stuff and the old stuff. If I click on this guy, I can see overview metrics. If I click on metrics, I could see a lot more detail. This is the new worker merged with pages. I got deployments, I got bindings, I could see here, observable. This is the logs, right? I should enable this because that's what I wanted to do. Enable the logs and deploy. Hopefully I'm not breaking the deployment. Yeah, so there I could see the logs, right? However, if I go back to the exact same interface of the front end, which I have here, I'm pretty certain this is the front end. This is the old interface. So you have to be careful with this because AI deployed one old and one new. I don't have any login here. This is the problem. So I'm kind of working blind right now. Let me just see if it actually is into. No, it's doing the deployment to the front end here. Let's see. It's updating the environment variables itself. I think. Working on AI fix. Configuration fixed. There was moment of truth again. Bam. It's funny you say I look tired. You know what it is? Energy in the room. There's nobody. So I'm just here by myself, just doing stuff. But let's see. Okay. There we go. Progress. This is not a bad error. So there could be a misconfiguration or service thing. Invalid client ID here. Right. So I'm getting this on Auth0. This is cool. This is actually known problems because when I click and refer over to Auth0, I'm getting invalid client ID. So we need to set the client ID. I'm going to get it for you. So we need to go back into Auth0 here, and no, I just got to do it. So this is a machine to machine. So this is actually the wrong client ID. Or wait, yes, no, that's right. I need to go to the, oh, hang on a second. Now I got a problem. Which client am I using? Good question. Vibe coding 101. Oh, you know what? Am I using this one? It's saying invalid client ID, but am I implementing this on the front end or on the back end? I might have to create a new application for the front end. I'm going to have to do it anyway, so we might as well just get it done. Because I have this, or you know what? I could just use this guy. I'll just use this guy because it's the same vibe coding URL Auth0, right? And then we're going to put the, yes, that's what we're going to do. Let me just make sure. Your callback URL, create a single page application and set it front end. Use this client ID, and I'm going to copy these. Use this client ID, and then we're going to rename this later on. Callback URL, so we could test locally also. Don't really want that right now. I'm just going to test online. And instead of using that URL, we're going to use the proper front end URL. There we go. And, oops. Yeah, there's no point in taking. Now, I don't know if I have to allow social media out on this here. We'll find out in 2 seconds. So I need to do comma, right? Save, do commas again. Yeah, so I might have to do connectors here. Social media. Okay, it's already enabled. Yeah, okay, so we should be good now. Okay, so I did that. Make sure you do a deployment again. Make sure we have the latest. Did it already? I might have done it. Let me see. I probably just did it. I'll do fresh deploy. Yeah. Okay. Moment of truth. If we can get to the Google page, we should be okay because at bare minimum, we should at least get to, let's see, moment of truth. Bam. Click on that. Oh, still a problem. Callback mismatch. Anyway. Okay. You know what? I'm going to use their URL for a second here. So the problem is the application, I'm going to tell it to you. Basically, it's not using this URL here. It's using this URL down at the bottom. So let me just tell it, can you ensure that all my callback URLs is using the generic URL for the front end, which is this one? Then do a deployment again so that I don't get the mismatch in callback error. Come on. Simple errors. But I wouldn't consider this one an error so much. In the meantime, I'm going to test with this URL here. What's the problem now? Unauthorized. Oh, right. Of course, because I didn't put that URL in Auth0. Okay, let's just wait. Almost there. And hopefully if we do our job right, we should be going from our app to Auth0. Click on the social icon button for Google. That should then do a dance to Google authorization. Allow us to authorize our app to then save the token in Auth0, which will then allow our app to call Auth0 for the token, which will then allow us to call Gmail. Fingers crossed. The beauty of development, it's a whole dance over and over. And if you notice, most of the time we've been spending, and at least in the last couple of weeks, it's just been on security. It's the thing that will take up one of the most time, which is why I want to make sure that I set up a framework to abstract all of these details from the vibe coders. You spend so much time on it. Once you get it abstracted away, then you don't have to think about it. On that note, it's one of the reasons why I do like CloudFlare. Because you can just come into CloudFlare and flick one switch, even though it's hidden, and it just adds authentication. It's not adding it on your application. It's just doing a layer above your application so that the minute it hits the network, it just redirects to authentication. For example, this is my own application here, the dashboard that snapsuite.io, right? If I go to incognito and I hit that, because Cloudflare is aware of the network, Cloudflare just redirects to Microsoft right away. So I have to log in with Microsoft before I could even get in there. So it just mitigates a lot of this dance that I'm doing on the authentication level. Let me see. It might just work because it's already configured to do the right thing. But let's see. Refresh. Click on it. Yeah, it's not, still doesn't recognize the URL because, okay, I'll tell you what. We're going to cheat a little bit here. In the interest of time, we're going to take this URL here just for testing purposes, just so we can move forward. We're going to put that URL in here, and then we're going to have to go back and change it every time. But it is what it is. So then a copy. So now I could save this. Now it knows about that URL. So if I refresh and I click on the Auth0, well, I say should, 1.4, what did I put in there? 142. Which one did I say? Of course, really. So I need to put this URL in here. I need to put this URL in here and this URL here. Save, then go to this. This is not bad because all what's happening is Google is saying, I don't really recognize this URL here because you're doing something different. So How do we deal with that? We could go to this guy here, and we could go to AI email summarizer, and we could add this URL and redirects these here. I think I might have to put the callback in. I think so. I think that's it. Let's try that. Click on this guy because this app sent an invalid request. You can try app later. You can't sign into this app because it doesn't comply with Google policy. If you're an app developer, register the redirect URL. Oh, you know what? It has to be, the details is the auth0. Yes, okay. So yes, okay, got you. So we have to register auth0's URL because it's coming from auth0. Forgot about that. You have to register auth0's URL because that's where it's actually coming from. The flow is coming from this guy, right? Because auth0 is the one that's going to actually get the security token. Let's try that again. Did it deploy it? Why am I still getting an error? If you're an app developer, register the redirect URI in Google Cloud Console. Yeah, so we did that already. It might just be taking a little time to, let me just edit it. JavaScript or redirect URIs here. Invalid request cannot contain white space. Come on, save. Dwayne unfinished. Google hasn't verified this app. You have been given access to an app that's currently being tested. You should only continue if you know the developer. Yes, continue. Right, so sign into auth0, Google auth0, verify, continue. auth0 wants to access your Google account to view, read emails. Select all, please, thank you. Continue. Better, pretty good. The question is, why did it fail? That's cool. So we're going to say I was able to get to the authentication page and go all the way to Gmail. I was able to enable the access page, the authorization page on Gmail. But then when it returned back to my account, I got this URL with the message authorization failed. Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm curious as to why that would be the case. Either way, that's progress because we've now done the full dance pretty much. I think if I go to auth0, you could see the user in here. Let me see in the logs. Let's go see what's going on in the logs.
It's time to pick up your child.
Yes, ma'am. So let's go see. Yeah, okay, there we go. So look, Dwayne Unfinished is in the database with connection of Google Auth 1 minute ago. So it is registering me properly inside of there. So I am registered in here. So that's good. I see the issue, the backend only has auth0 domain, the secret, but needs several other authentication secret. Right, okay, to call back the API. So yeah, okay, so the client ID is fine. And then it's going to ask me for the client secret. So the client ID is this, applications, backend. So this is the client ID. So we need to put that here into the client secret value, client ID. And then it's going to ask me for the secret, paste that. Enter. Perfect. So now we got the secret. Let's do a deployment now. The redirect URL will be this one. We're just going to have to go with this for now. Okay, let's do that. No, let me do the redirect URL because we have to fix this problem. Else we're going to run into other problems in the future. We have to make sure that the URL is this one here. But we know how to fix it later on. So that will be the redirect URL. Yeah, okay. So the issue is that we're seeing different URLs here. Yes, I know that. All we got to do is just make sure that the URLs match up and we're good. We're at least having access. So that's fantastic. I think it's fixing it. Let's see. So the issue is that we're seeing different URL and thing, which is a preview deployment. So let's update the environment to use the proper production URL. Fantastic. The environment is already correct. Good news. auth0 callback endpoint. So in theory, we should be able to get this working again without, let's see, we should be able to get this working with the new URL because we have all the pieces configured both in auth0 and in Google. All right, fingers crossed, almost there. All right, let's see if we could get some closure here. Good now, WhatsApp. What are you asking me for here? So that's a redirect callback URL. Okay, let me update the front end. Yeah, can you get rid of the preview URLs? That's what we should do. Get rid of the preview URLs. Okay, it's deploying the front end and the back end. We want to get the real URL being used. So tell it to get rid of the preview, deploy this front end. Come on. Okay, so can you get rid of all the preview URLs from my local environment variables? We only want to use the proper URL. Yeah, we got to do the right thing, else it's going to cause some problems in the future. So Wrangler seek. Oh, why does it keep asking me for the same thing over and over? Let me just tell it, hey, you got a new user, man. Hey, welcome. How are you doing? Thanks for your CloudFlare videos. You're welcome, man. 100%. All day long. We're here every single time. Feel free to join again. We're wrapping up. I appreciate you messaging and saying thanks for the videos. We're going to be putting out better quality videos soon. I'm working on a full end-to-end Cloudflare guidance course that's going to take you from zero to scalable architecture. Fun fact for you guys while we're on this call, and we just got like a few very, very limited amounts of people. So Cloudflare earnings, it wasn't this week. No, it wasn't a thing. As you know, so Azure had their earnings this week. AWS had their earnings, I think, the week before or whatever. AWS earnings, I think, if I remember correctly, is $33 billion in the quarter. Now, contrast that to Apple and Google, that's in $100 billion for the quarter. So even AWS and Microsoft are way behind. Azure for the quarter was $26 billion, creeping up on AWS, and they're both growing at still some pretty impressive rates. I want to say 20% or something like that. Cloudflare, to put things into perspective, is only a $500 million company. So I was like, oh man, that's crazy, because if you look at the trajectory of Cloudflare is growing 33% year over year. I went back to figure out when Azure was a $500 million company, how much it was growing. They were growing at the same growth rate. So that tells me that Cloudflare in 10 years' time will be a very big and different company. We're on the right path. All you people that are interested in Cloudflare, it's going to get wild. You will be in demand for Cloudflare because of the growth trajectory. So just thought I'd put that out there as a thing. Let's see if we could get this going. Click on this. Of course, because now the URL has changed. The client ID is different. Oh, no, that's what it is. It's this one here. We don't want it. We want this URL. We're going to click on it. URL mismatch again. Still trying to do the wrong URL. Okay, hang on a second. Let's see if we could get this fixed. You have to go here and see if we could get the binding, configure route. It's hard coded. So you know what we have to do? We have to go here and take this Nux public URL and add it here as a secret and collect this guy here. It's not actually setting up the secret. That's what's going on right now. So I have to manually do it. And then we need the client ID as well. And then we need the domain name. Okay, we're going to try to close this off. Close off. No, you stop what you're doing. I'm going to say, hey, I think you're deploying the Cloudflare secrets to the wrong location in the dashboard. So I basically manually added the secrets and the redirect. Can you double check and then make another deployment? All right, I'm going to have to close off in a bit, guys. Join the community. Join the vibe coding community. Link at the top of me. You're in Brazil, so you're in my neighboring country. I was born in Guyana, South America, so literally you're on my country and your country touch the same border. So we're connected in some way already. Join the community. Reach out to me. Let me know what you're working on. I'd be happy to learn what's going on in your world. And any single thing that I can help you with, more than happy to help you out. I appreciate you just messaging and saying from Brazil. That's cool. If you join, then I think we officially touch every continent globally. Let me see. I think so. Yeah, maybe except for Russia and China, which I'm sure we're going to get people from soon enough. So by all means. But okay, let's see if this thing actually goes through. Public URL. Why is it giving me a public? Why is it asking for a public URL? Put public URI, project name, some secret. Jeez, I don't know which secret it's asking for. I'm just going to keep putting in the same secret here because I think it's doing the wrong thing. But anyway, public URI, verified Wrangler public. Now all the required secrets. Deployed distribution. I'm going to try one more time. If not, totally fine. We've got through the hard part. We just have a configuration on the URL mistake. Great. So let's go back here, refresh, click on this. Okay, that's good. Click on this guy. Authentication failed. Not the end of the world. We know exactly what's going on. It's just a nuanced configuration of the backend, the front end. In either case, we've made significant progress. And what we're going to do next week, we're just going to wrap up the pieces. We're going to focus on the AI stuff. Listen, guys, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate every one of you, even if it's a very small group. I appreciate every single one of you. And thank you for just join and say hi. Let me know you appreciate the effort that I'm making here. It really helps. I don't think you know how hard it is. Come on a live stream from 1 p.m. all the way to 4 p.m. and then have very little people on the chat. So the energy level drops. So any little message helps to boost the energy level. That being said, I'm doing this whether somebody shows up or not. I will do my part. So you guys have yourself a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in the group. Message me if there's any problem. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Goodbye.